He had everything money could buy, but as he saw her, sitting on the curb, cradling her children and silently crying, he realized some things couldn't be bought, including her heart. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The morning sun glinted off the glass towers of downtown, casting long reflections on the asphalt streets below. In a sleek corner office high above the city, Ethan Cole, the millionaire, straightened his tailored navy suit in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. Every line, every fold was perfect, because in his world, perfection was safety. Money, success, influence, they had insulated him from disappointment for decades. But as he glanced at the calendar on his phone, a flicker of frustration crossed his face. The blind date he'd agreed to for tonight had just cancelled. Last minute, curt, no explanation. Normally, Ethan would shrug it off. He was used to getting what he wanted. But something about the anticipation of this evening had gnawed at him. A thrill he hadn't felt in years, an unknown, unpredictable spark. He felt a twinge of disappointment he couldn't quite name, a crack in his polished armor. He poured himself a cup of black coffee, the aroma rich and bitter, and gazed out the window at the bustling city below. Funny, he murmured to himself, how life can surprise you even when you think it's all planned. His phone buzzed with an alert. Reminder. Dinner at 7 p.m. He sighed and shook his head. Maybe this was just another evening of solitude in a penthouse full of expensive silence. Across the city, in a small, cluttered apartment that smelled faintly of laundry soap and morning toast, Tasha Monroe wrestled her two children into their jackets. 7-year-old Lila tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide with excitement, while 5-year-old Jordan clutched his toy car like it could protect him from the chaos of the world. Tasha's phone buzzed, a reminder of the blind date she had agreed to reluctantly. She had spent hours convincing herself it was just a chance to step out of the endless grind of motherhood, to taste something resembling adult life, even if only for a night. But now, sitting in her car outside the grocery store parking lot, she stared at the missed call from the restaurant. Her chest tightened. The date had been cancelled. Again. A single tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed, pulling the kids close. "It's okay," she whispered, forcing a smile for them. "We'll just have a quiet night. Just us." But the exhaustion in her bones, the weight of constant responsibility, pressed down like a heavy blanket. She felt seen by no one, understood by no one. Her heart ached for a connection she feared might never come. Ethan, frustrated by the cancelled dinner, decided to clear his mind with a drive. He slid into his sleek black car, the engine purring like a contented predator. He didn't know why he had this sudden urge to just drive, to leave the penthouse and the sterile perfection behind. As he navigated the streets, he thought about life's unpredictability, how even someone like him, accustomed to control, could be confronted by the unexpected. And then, as he turned into the lot behind a small strip of shops, he saw her. Tasha, sitting on the curb, children clinging to her sides, tears streaking her face. The sight stopped him mid-step. The world around him blurred, the honking cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the morning sun bouncing off windows. All of it vanished in the gravity of this raw, unguarded moment. She was utterly vulnerable, yet there was a dignity to the way she held her children, a resilience he couldn't ignore. He parked a few spaces away, hands gripping the wheel. A million rehearsed lines ran through his mind, none of them fitting. He had been on countless dates, attended endless events where charm and wealth opened doors. But nothing had prepared him for this. Something unnameable pulled at his chest, a combination of empathy, fascination, and a spark of desire. Tasha, unaware of the man watching her, whispered softly to her children, "We'll be okay, I promise. Mommy's got us." The tenderness in her voice, the fierce love shining through her exhaustion, struck him harder than any display of wealth or status ever could. He sat in his car for a long moment, torn between stepping out or staying hidden, wondering if a single act of courage could break the invisible barrier between their worlds. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a question forming, one he wasn't used to asking himself. Could I be the one to change her life, and let her change mine? Have you ever had a moment where life put someone right in front of you, completely changing everything? Comment below. What would you do if you were Ethan right now? The parking lot smelled faintly of gasoline and morning dew, a mundane backdrop for a moment that would feel anything but ordinary. Ethan stepped out of his car, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes, and for a moment hesitated. He should have driven on, ignored the scene. After all, what was a man of his world doing among spilled cereal boxes, discarded juice cartons, and the quiet sobs of a woman holding her children close? But he didn't move. Something in the curve of Tasha's shoulders, the way her fingers fumbled with a loose shoelace on Lila's sneaker, rooted him in place. Her tears glimmered in the morning light like tiny, fragile jewels, so human, so raw, that he felt an unfamiliar ache behind his chest. Tasha, unaware of the figure watching her, rocked Jordan gently. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's here. Mommy's always here." She tried to smile, but her lips quivered and her voice betrayed her fatigue. The weight of the world seemed to press down on her, but she refused to crumble entirely. Ethan swallowed hard, and finally, almost hesitantly, stepped closer. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me." Tasha jerked her head up, eyes wide and wary. A flash of defensiveness sparked across her face, a single mother used to surviving alone, accustomed to shielding herself from pity or unwanted attention. "Yes?" she asked, voice tight, controlled. He hesitated, scanning the children for a safe way to introduce himself without seeming intrusive. I think you were supposed to meet me for dinner tonight." His words hung in the air, tentative, as if afraid they might shatter the fragile equilibrium of the moment. Recognition flickered in her eyes, quickly followed by embarrassment. She dropped her gaze to the children. "Oh, yes, I'm sorry," she stammered. Her throat tightened. I had to cancel last minute. Something came up." Her voice cracked slightly, and Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest. Here she was, not some polished, rehearsed date, but a woman completely exposed, trying to hold it together for her children. He noticed the way she blinked back tears, how Lila's small hand clutched hers, as if to anchor them both. Ethan struggled, unsure how to respond. He had never felt like this before. Compassion, curiosity, and something more, all tangled together. I didn't expect. Well, I wasn't expecting to see anyone here. Especially not like this." Tasha swallowed, bracing herself against vulnerability. "Life doesn't always go as planned," she murmured, almost to herself. Jordan tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" She knelt to his level, pressing a kiss to his temple. "Yes, baby. We'll be okay." Then, her gaze swept upward to Ethan. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink to the four of them in that empty lot. The millionaire, the mother, and her children. Time slowed. Ethan felt a sudden, protective urge. He bent slightly, lowering his voice. "Do you want help?" Tasha blinked at him, surprised. Not a question of pity, but a genuine offer. I don't know," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. We're fine. Really. She gestured vaguely at the tears, the scattered items, the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. "It's just been a lot." Ethan nodded slowly. He could see it, the burden she carried silently, a strength born from endless struggle. He remembered the first time he had ever felt truly alone despite being surrounded by wealth and influence. Something inside him ached at the recognition. "Would it be okay if I stayed for a moment? Just until you feel a little better." His words were careful, respectful, but earnest. Tasha hesitated, caught off guard by the sincerity. But the warmth in his eyes, the lack of judgment, the simple acknowledgement of her struggle, it stirred something she hadn't felt in a long time: trust. "Okay," she whispered finally. "Just a minute." And so, they sat there on the curb together, silence punctuated only by the children's small movements. Ethan handed Lila a granola bar he had in his pocket, which she accepted shyly, her eyes wide with curiosity and awe. Jordan, meanwhile, inspected Ethan's polished shoes with a mix of fascination and suspicion. The tension slowly eased, replaced by a delicate rhythm of shared presence. Tasha's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Ethan realized that connection didn't always need words. Sometimes, it simply required acknowledgement, a recognition of each other's humanity in a world that often ignored it. Finally, Tasha exhaled, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of months, maybe years. "Thank you," she said softly. I didn't expect this." Ethan shook his head, smiling faintly. "Neither did I. But maybe some surprises are worth it." And in that unremarkable parking lot, under the morning sun and amidst spilled cereal and quiet despair, the first spark ignited. Neither of them knew where it would lead, only that their lives had shifted irrevocably in the span of a single moment. Have you ever met someone unexpectedly and felt like life just paused for a moment? Tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were in Tasha's or Ethan's shoes? Ethan drove away from the parking lot, the city streets a blur through his windshield. His hand rested lightly on the steering wheel, but inside, his mind was racing. Why does she haunt me like this? He repeated her name silently. Tasha. The sight of her, raw and vulnerable, had pierced the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart. He wasn't used to feeling powerless, yet there it was, a tug he couldn't explain. Back in the penthouse, he poured himself another coffee, the bitter aroma doing little to settle the storm inside him. He replayed every moment in his mind, the curve of her shoulders, the way she held her children, the quiet dignity she carried despite obvious struggle. For the first time in years, money and status meant nothing. And yet, he couldn't act. He couldn't just waltz into her life. Their worlds were too different. He reminded himself of the rules: charm, discretion, control. None of them applied here. Tasha, meanwhile, returned to her small apartment, exhausted but resolute. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter, glanced at the children who were now playing quietly, and exhaled a shaky breath. Her mind was a whirlwind. Who was that man? She had expected the date to be nothing more than a fleeting distraction, a chance to pretend her life was simpler for a night. Yet seeing him there, hesitant, kind, and somehow real, had stirred something inside her she had carefully buried. But she shook her head, brushing away the thought. She had survived for years without depending on anyone. Vulnerability was dangerous. Men like him didn't belong in her world. They didn't understand the relentless grind of single motherhood, the quiet desperation, the unspoken worry for every scraped knee, every unpaid bill. No, she couldn't think about him. She had to focus on her children, her job, the reality she could control. The next day at work, Ethan moved through his office like a man haunted. Meetings, phone calls, financial reports, they all seemed distant, almost irrelevant. He caught himself staring out the window, imagining Tasha sitting on that curb, the sun catching her tears. He tried to push the thought away, rationalize it. It's not my place. It's just sympathy. That's all. But deep down, he knew it was more. He couldn't explain it. He wasn't supposed to feel this way, especially for a woman he barely knew. He avoided calling, avoided thinking about reaching out. Pride, self-control, and fear of intrusion held him back. And yet, every message, every notification from his phone seemed like it might carry news of her, or worse, be empty, leaving him with the gnawing ache of what if. Tasha, too, wrestled with conflicting emotions. She told herself to forget him, to move on. And yet, throughout her day, she caught herself glancing at the clock, wondering if he would call, if he even remembered her. She chastised herself for the thought. I don't need anyone. I can handle this alone. But when Lila leaned on her arm, eyes wide, she whispered, almost ashamed, "Do you think he'll call Mommy?" Tasha's heart skipped. She shook her head quickly. "No, sweetheart. We're fine just the way we are." But even as she spoke, she knew part of her wanted to hope, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like other men. Later that evening, Ethan found himself walking through a quiet park, the city lights shimmering like distant stars. The world felt strangely empty without her presence. He imagined her voice, soft and weary, offering comfort to her children. His chest tightened at the thought. But he wouldn't reach out. Not yet. Fear of rejection, fear of overstepping, fear of being seen as another man who couldn't understand her life kept him frozen. He wrestled internally, his mind cycling through every possible scenario, every potential misstep. Meanwhile, Tasha tucked the children into bed, brushing a strand of hair from Jordan's forehead. She whispered a quiet prayer for guidance, for strength, for clarity. And then, as the soft hum of the city seeped through the window, she allowed herself a fleeting thought, maybe he really does care. She scolded herself immediately, forcing the thought away. She was a mother. Her life was not for taking chances with fleeting moments of connection. Days passed. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken words and unacknowledged emotions. Ethan watched from afar, resisting the urge to call, to check in, to bridge the distance he now felt acutely. Tasha's world continued, filled with laundry, meals, and work, yet a quiet, persistent echo of him lingered, a shadow she couldn't quite shake. Each avoided action, each restraint, only deepened the tension. Both were caught between longing and fear, empathy and pride. Both were resisting the pull they couldn't deny, trying to protect themselves from a vulnerability that felt dangerous, unpredictable, and yet necessary. And in that silent struggle, something unspoken began to form. A mutual recognition of possibility, a subtle heartbeat of connection neither dared fully acknowledge. Have you ever been drawn to someone but held yourself back out of fear or pride? Share your story in the comments. Would you risk reaching out, or let the moment pass? The rain came suddenly, slashing across the city streets in jagged sheets, drenching everything in its path. Tasha hustled her children down the sidewalk, jackets barely keeping them dry, umbrellas forgotten in the chaos of a hurried morning. Her bag slipped from her shoulder and landed in a puddle, soaking the paperwork inside. Lila whimpered, tugging at her sleeve. Jordan stomped in a puddle, sending water spraying over both of them. Tasha groaned, running a hand through her damp hair. Okay, we're fine. Let's just get to the car." Her voice wavered between reassurance and exasperation. She had fought through this kind of day countless times before, yet the exhaustion pressed down harder than usual. From a few blocks away, Ethan navigated the streets, caught in the same torrential downpour. The city seemed transformed, bleary headlights reflecting on wet asphalt, pedestrians scurrying like startled birds. He hadn't stopped thinking about Tasha since the parking lot incident. Her image haunted him, the way she had held her children, the raw vulnerability that had drawn him in. He had promised himself he wouldn't interfere, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. And then, through the rain-streaked windshield, he saw her. Tasha, struggling with two drenched children, juggling soaked bags, clearly in need of help. His chest tightened, and instinct took over. He parked hastily and dashed toward them, ignoring the water soaking through his designer shoes. "Miss! Hey!" he called, voice urgent over the roar of the storm. Tasha spun, startled, shielding the children from the sudden presence of a man she barely knew. Recognition dawned, and her heart skipped. "Ethan!" He offered his hands, steady and calm. "Come on, let me help. You're soaked." Tasha hesitated, caught between pride and relief. She wanted to decline, to handle it herself as she always did. But the rain was relentless, the children shivering, and the soaked papers weighed down her bag like lead. With a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay, thank you." Ethan guided them to his car, opening the back doors and ushering the children inside. He grabbed the wet bags, balancing them carefully on the passenger seat. Inside, the warmth of the leather seats and the dry interior contrasted sharply with the storm outside. Lila looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Jordan gripped his toy car tightly, still uncertain about this stranger who had suddenly intruded into their chaos. Tasha sank into the driver's seat, her hair plastered to her forehead, and exhaled. I don't know how to thank you. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ethan smiled, brushing damp hair from his own face. You don't have to. Just consider me your emergency umbrella. His attempt at humor drew a small laugh from Tasha, the first genuine one since the parking lot incident. The ride was quiet at first, punctuated by the soft patter of rain on the roof. Ethan stole glances at Tasha, noticing the way her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. He sensed the fatigue and vulnerability beneath her composure, and it pulled at something deep inside him. You know, Ethan said carefully, breaking the silence, you're handling this all on your own? Tasha shrugged, a small, wry smile on her lips. What choice do I have? Her voice was steady but tinged with weariness. It's not ideal, but it's life. I've learned to manage. Ethan nodded, understanding more than she could know. He remembered the suffocating weight of expectations in his own life, the lonely hours behind glass towers and polished surfaces. I get that. I really do, he said quietly. But maybe it doesn't always have to be that way. Tasha looked at him, skepticism and curiosity mingling in her gaze. And you think you can fix it? She asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. He smiled faintly. I don't know about fixing it. I just can help if you'll let me. For a moment, Tasha considered pushing back, telling him no, keeping her walls intact. But looking at her children, safe, warm, and still shivering slightly from the rain, she realized that sometimes help was not weakness. Sometimes it was the beginning of something unexpected. Okay, she whispered, almost to herself. Thank you. The car grew quiet again, but now the silence was different. It was a shared space, a fragile bubble of trust forming amid the storm. Ethan watched her, noting every detail, the curve of her smile, the strength in her posture, the careful way she adjusted her seatbelt with tired hands. He realized he wanted to know everything about her, her struggles, her dreams, the small moments of joy that she fought to preserve for her children. And Tasha, for her part, felt a strange flutter she hadn't expected. This man, with all his wealth and polished veneer, seemed human, real, vulnerable in ways that mirrored her own life, yet steady enough to anchor her in the storm. By the time they reached her apartment building, the rain had eased to a drizzle. The children were warm and dry, their small smiles a quiet testament to the unexpected comfort they had found. Ethan handed them out carefully, and Lila hugged his arm tightly, whispering, "Thank you." Jordan followed, more cautiously, but still glanced up at him with tentative trust. Tasha exhaled, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. I don't know what I would have done without you today." Ethan met her gaze, the weight of the moment pressing between them. "Sometimes life gives us moments we don't expect," he said softly. "And maybe that's when the most important things happen." They lingered, neither wanting to break the fragile connection forming in the quiet aftermath of the storm. The day had forced them together, circumstances leaving no room for resistance, no room for retreat. For the first time, walls began to crack, vulnerability finding its way through. Have you ever been thrown together with someone unexpectedly, and it changed the way you see them? Comment below. Would you let fate take the lead, or guard your heart? The quiet hum of Tasha's apartment contrasted sharply with the storm that had just passed. The children were settled in their rooms, the soft lull of a bedtime story still echoing faintly in the hall. Tasha sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, trying to steady her thoughts. The events of the day lingered in her mind like a stubborn shadow. She remembered the first time she had felt truly abandoned. Her ex-partner had left without explanation, leaving her with a small apartment, a newborn baby, and bills she didn't know how to pay. The betrayal had carved a hollow space inside her, one she had spent years filling with determination and stubborn resilience. Love had become a dangerous luxury, something she approached cautiously, with walls firmly in place. Ethan, meanwhile, returned to his penthouse, pacing silently through the gleaming marble floors. His life had been one of privilege and control, yet he carried a quiet loneliness that no amount of wealth could fill. His parents, brilliant and demanding, had raised him in a world where achievement was valued over affection. He had learned to mask vulnerability behind charm, investments, and perfectly tailored suits. True connection had always felt out of reach, until today. The next afternoon, Ethan found himself driving past Tasha's neighborhood. Something compelled him to stop, not to intrude, but to understand. He parked discreetly and watched from a distance as she navigated the sidewalk with Lila and Jordan. There was something in the way she moved, purposeful yet weary, that told him more than words ever could. Her courage was quiet but undeniable. And it struck him, this wasn't a woman looking for rescue, she was surviving, thriving, despite the odds. Meanwhile, Tasha prepared for work, methodically organizing lunchboxes and school bags. She paused at a photograph pinned to her fridge, a younger version of herself, smiling at a graduation ceremony, a life full of promise and hope. The contrast between then and now was stark, and a pang of longing swept through her chest. She had sacrificed parts of herself to raise her children, to survive, to endure. And yet, seeing Ethan had stirred something she had thought buried forever, a longing to be seen, truly seen, not just as a mother or a survivor, but as herself. Later, Ethan and Tasha unexpectedly crossed paths again at a local grocery store. Their eyes met across the produce aisle, hesitation and recognition mingling in the space between them. Ethan approached, trying to mask the nervous energy that had taken root in his chest. "Tasha," he said gently, "I didn't expect to see you here." Tasha glanced at him, her lips pressed into a tight line. "Ethan," she replied cautiously. She was caught between acknowledging the connection and preserving the walls she had fought so hard to maintain. He gestured to the cart of groceries she was pushing. "Need a hand?" She hesitated, the instinct to refuse warring with relief. I guess that would help," she said softly. As they moved through the aisles together, fragments of their pasts surfaced in conversation, small confessions, carefully chosen. Tasha spoke of the struggles of raising her children alone, the nights she stayed awake worrying about rent and school supplies. She didn't mention the nights she cried herself to sleep, too proud or ashamed to let anyone see her fear. Ethan shared glimpses of his life too, his parents' absence despite material abundance, the loneliness of a world where everyone expected perfection, the pressure of success that often left him hollow. Neither of them said it directly, but the unspoken parallel hung between them. Both had loved and lost, both had been forced to armor themselves against the world. By the time they reached the checkout, a subtle understanding had formed. They weren't just two strangers who had met in a parking lot, they were people carrying scars, carrying histories that shaped every choice, every hesitation. And yet, there was also the spark of possibility, a recognition that shared vulnerability could lead to something neither of them had dared hope for. Outside the store, rain began to fall again, light and persistent this time. Tasha adjusted her coat, glancing at Ethan. "I didn't expect to enjoy this," she admitted, almost reluctantly. "But it's nice talking like this." Ethan smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "It is," he agreed. "Sometimes the unexpected moments are the ones that matter most." They lingered for a moment, standing under the awning, watching the city hum around them. There was a fragile, unspoken bond forming, one built not on wealth, appearances, or convenience, but on shared understanding and mutual respect. For the first time, both felt the possibility of connection without pretense. That night, Tasha tucked her children into bed, a soft smile playing on her lips. She thought of Ethan, not as a millionaire, not as a stranger, but as someone who had seen her in a way few ever had. And though she tried to push the thought away, she found herself hoping for another encounter, another moment that might bridge the worlds between them. Ethan, in his penthouse, poured himself a glass of wine, staring out at the city skyline. He thought of Tasha and her children, their quiet resilience, and the unexpected warmth he had felt in their presence. He realized that wealth had never given him what he craved most: authenticity, connection, and the courage to be vulnerable. And maybe, just maybe, Tasha was the person who could teach him that. Have you ever met someone whose story mirrored your own in ways you didn't expect? Comment below. How would you open up to someone who might understand your pain? A week later, the city buzzed with its usual rhythm, but for Ethan and Tasha, time seemed to stretch differently. Their encounters, once tentative and hesitant, had grown into something more natural: shared smiles, light teasing, and conversations that lingered longer than necessary. It began with small gestures. Ethan would appear at the corner coffee shop Tasha frequented, carrying 2 steaming cups of cocoa, one for him, one for her. "Thought you might like a little warmth before work," he said, offering the cup. Tasha would glance up, initially startled, then allow herself a small, genuine smile. "You spoil me," she teased softly, but her heart felt lighter than it had in months. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on hopes, regrets, and dreams. One morning, as they walked the children to the park, Tasha confided, "I never imagined someone like you would understand or care. People usually see me and my kids and just judge." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't pull away. She allowed herself to be seen. Ethan's gaze softened. "I've never been good at judging," he admitted. "I've spent my life chasing perfection, and realizing it leaves you hollow. But seeing your strength, it's inspiring." The children, for their part, warmed quickly to Ethan. Lila would dash to hug his legs, calling him Mr. Ethan, while Jordan would cautiously show him his latest drawings, seeking approval that Ethan gave freely. Tasha watched, a mixture of amusement and relief crossing her face. Here was a man who wasn't intimidated by her life, who didn't shy away from the chaos or the responsibility that came with it. One evening, after a shared dinner at Tasha's modest apartment, they lingered on the couch while the children played quietly nearby. Ethan noticed a small, faded bracelet on her wrist, a simple thread with a tiny charm. "That's beautiful," he remarked. "Does it mean something?" Tasha's gaze softened, a quiet vulnerability in her eyes. "It was my mother's," she whispered. "She gave it to me before she passed away. It reminds me to stay strong for my kids, to keep moving forward." Ethan nodded, touched. "You carry so much, and still, you radiate this strength." He paused, the weight of his next words pressing on him. I admire that, more than I can say." For a moment, silence enveloped them, not uncomfortable, but intimate. They sat side by side, shoulders nearly touching, letting the unspoken connection speak for them. It was a moment of peace, a glimpse at what life could feel like if they allowed themselves to trust, to lean on someone else without fear. Lila, sensing the mood, tugged on Tasha's sleeve. "Mommy, can we read a story?" Tasha laughed softly, and Ethan leaned closer to help. As Tasha read aloud, Ethan watched her animated expressions, the way her eyes lit up with each twist of the tale. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of home, a place where he could simply exist without pretense. Later that week, they went on a small outing to the park. The autumn leaves were golden, the air crisp and refreshing. Ethan pushed the children on swings while Tasha watched, laughing at their gleeful squeals. "You're good with them," she observed quietly. Ethan smiled, a mixture of pride and humility in his gaze. "I didn't know I could be. But, being around you, I feel different. Lighter, I guess." Tasha's eyes softened. "I feel that too." She hesitated, then added, "It's strange, isn't it? How quickly life can change." He nodded. "Sometimes the best things come when you least expect them." That night, as they walked back to Tasha's apartment, the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds, Ethan reached for her hand. It was tentative at first, a small gesture, but Tasha didn't pull away. Instead, she laced her fingers with his, letting the warmth flow between them. It was a silent acknowledgement, trust was forming, and hearts were opening. For the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a life together, not perfect, not without challenges, but authentic and full of connection. The storm of their pasts and the resistance of their earlier encounters had begun to dissipate, leaving space for hope and tentative joy. Have you ever felt a connection so real it made you believe in second chances? Comment below. How do you know when to let someone in? It was a Friday evening, and the city glowed with the golden light of sunset reflecting off glass towers. Tasha had planned a quiet night at home with the children, but a sudden knock at the door disrupted the calm. She opened it to find a sleek black car parked outside her building. From the car stepped a well-dressed woman with an air of authority and familiarity. "Ethan?" she asked, her tone pointed, almost accusatory. Tasha's heart sank as she realized this was someone from his world, someone who clearly knew him intimately. Before Tasha could speak, the woman addressed her directly. "I didn't know you were seeing him. You need to know, he's not available in the way you think." Her words were sharp, judgmental, the kind that carried insinuation and threat. Tasha felt a sudden heat rise to her cheeks, anger and insecurity mingling in a rush of emotion. "What do you mean?" Tasha asked, her voice tight. "We've only just—" The woman interrupted. "Don't play naive. He has responsibilities, commitments, a life you don't understand. I'm just trying to protect him from making a mistake." She glanced at Tasha with a mixture of pity and disdain before retreating to her car and leaving as abruptly as she had appeared. Tasha's hands shook, her chest tightening with a mix of betrayal and fear. She didn't know what to believe. Had Ethan been dishonest with her? Had their budding connection been built on half-truths? She felt the familiar walls of self-protection rise, taller and more impenetrable than before. Ethan arrived minutes later, rain still threatening in the distance. He opened the door, smiling hesitantly. "Tasha, But she cut him off. "Who was that?" Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. "And why did she say that about you?" Ethan froze, taken aback. "That woman, she's from my work, nothing more." "I promise you she isn't." Tasha's eyes narrowed, the sting of doubt and wounded pride overriding reason. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Everything's complicated, and now I don't even know what's real." Ethan's chest tightened. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Tasha, please. You have to believe me. I haven't hidden anything from you. I care about you and your children more than you realize." But his words seemed futile against the tidal wave of her emotions. Her mind raced, replaying the events of the day, the insinuations, the fear that someone from his world would never truly accept her. She felt small, vulnerable, and yet exposed in a way that frightened her. I need time," she whispered, turning away. She moved toward her bedroom, closing the door with a soft but final click. Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, the sound echoing like a verdict. That night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, the city skyline a blur of lights and shadows. His phone vibrated constantly, but he resisted calling Tasha, knowing that words alone might not undo the hurt. He replayed the encounter, the woman's insinuations, Tasha's reaction. He realized how quickly insecurity and fear could undo even the strongest connection. Meanwhile, Tasha lay in bed, the children asleep nearby, her mind a battlefield. She loved the man she barely knew, yet fear gnawed at her. Could someone from his world truly understand her? Would he choose her, or the life he had always known? The doubts multiplied, and she felt herself retreating, pulling back to the fortress she had built over years of struggle. The next morning, Silence hung heavy between them. Ethan sent a message. I want to see you. Please. Let's talk. Tasha didn't respond. Hours passed, then a full day, each one stretching painfully. Both felt the absence, the distance, but neither could bridge the gap without risking further hurt. By the third day, Ethan couldn't contain himself. He arrived at her apartment, determined to confront the misunderstanding, to fight for the connection he had come to cherish. He knocked softly, but Tasha didn't answer immediately. When she finally opened the door, her eyes were guarded, her arms crossed protectively across her chest. I don't know if we should do this, she said bluntly. I don't know if I can trust you, or myself, not after yesterday. Ethan's voice was steady but raw. Tasha, I'm not going anywhere. I won't let someone else's words define what we have. I care about you, truly. I'm not perfect, but I'm real. And I want us to be real together. Tasha looked at him, the storm of emotions swirling in her chest. Hurt, fear, longing, and love all tangled together. She wanted to believe him, to let down her walls, but the memory of that woman's insinuations clawed at her mind. I need time, she repeated, but there was a softness in her voice this time, a crack in the armor that had kept her safe. Ethan nodded, holding back frustration and fear. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I promise. And in that moment, both realized the cost of love, the vulnerability, the uncertainty, the risk of heartbreak. They were at the shatter point, the emotional nadir of their journey. But beneath the hurt, beneath the walls and fear, the spark of connection still burned, fragile but persistent. Have you ever faced a misunderstanding that threatened to ruin something precious? Comment below. Would you fight for it, or walk away? The morning sunlight spilled through Tasha's kitchen window, painting the small room in warm, golden tones. It should have felt peaceful, but the silence was heavy, a constant reminder of the distance between her and Ethan. She sipped her coffee slowly, staring out the window at the city that moved on without pause, wondering if love was worth the risk of being hurt again. Her mind replayed the encounter with the other woman, her own fear, and Ethan's desperate, pleading gaze the night he came to her door. Each memory tugged at her heart, but fear still whispered louder than hope. I've been abandoned before. I can't let it happen again. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his office, the penthouse unusually quiet. He stared at the city skyline, hands clasped tightly. Every instinct told him to reach out, to cross that distance, but he knew words alone wouldn't heal the rift. Love required more than promises. It required trust, vulnerability, and courage. He thought of Tasha, her children, the spark of warmth that had begun to grow between them. Do I let her go, or do I fight for something that could be extraordinary? Later that day, fate intervened in a subtle, ordinary way. Tasha's car wouldn't start, leaving her stranded in the small parking lot near her apartment. She exhaled sharply, frustration mixing with resignation. Just as she began to pull out her phone to call a tow service, she felt a familiar presence. Need a lift. Ethan's voice, calm and unwavering, broke through her storm of thoughts. She turned, caught off guard. He stood there, umbrella in hand, rain clouds hovering in the distance. His eyes held the same sincerity, the same unspoken plea from days before. Tasha hesitated, pride warring with longing. She wanted to say no, to retreat into her walls, but the tension in her chest made the decision for her. Okay, she said quietly, opening the car door. Inside the car, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken emotion. Ethan started the engine, glancing at her cautiously. I know I can't erase yesterday, he began, voice soft but firm. But I need you to know, everything I've said, everything I feel, it's real. I don't want to let fear or misunderstanding take us apart. Tasha exhaled, tears pricking her eyes. I don't know if I can trust myself to believe that, she admitted. I've been hurt too many times, but I can't deny that I want to. Ethan reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. "Then let's take the first step together," he said. "No promises of perfection, just honesty, vulnerability, connection. Are you willing?" For a long moment, Tasha studied him, weighing the risk against the longing in her heart. Her past whispered caution, but the spark that had been kindling since the parking lot encounter now roared quietly but insistently. Finally, she nodded, a soft smile breaking through her guarded expression. "Yes, I'll try." The drive was quiet but filled with subtle intimacy. They spoke in low tones, sharing small details of their lives, laughing softly, reconnecting through shared experiences. For the first time since the shattering incident, Tasha felt a sense of hope, a possibility that connection could survive fear. Arriving at her apartment, Ethan didn't rush away. Instead, he waited as Tasha opened the door, allowing a space for trust to solidify. "I'll always respect your pace," he said quietly. "No pressure, no rushing. Just me here for you." Tasha's eyes glistened, and she finally allowed herself to step closer, letting her hand brush against his. I appreciate that," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I don't want to lose this." Ethan smiled, warmth flooding his expression. "You won't," he promised. "We'll figure it out, together." Later that evening, Tasha tucked her children into bed, their sleepy smiles reflecting the peace that had settled over the household. She paused at Lila's doorway, whispering, "Mommy's going to be okay. I think I finally understand what it means to take a chance." Ethan sat nearby, quietly observing, giving her space yet offering silent reassurance. When Tasha emerged from the bedroom, she found him waiting in the living room. He didn't rush forward or demand attention. Instead, he simply smiled and gestured toward the couch. "May I?" he asked. Tasha nodded, and he sat beside her, close but respectful. Their fingers intertwined naturally, a quiet acknowledgement that the choice had been made. Neither spoke immediately. Words weren't necessary. The connection, once fragile and tested, now held steady, anchored in mutual trust and willingness to be vulnerable. For the first time, both felt the weight of past hurts ease, replaced with the tentative warmth of hope. They realized that love wasn't about perfection, it was about presence, effort, and the courage to stay even when fear whispered to walk away. The sun rose slowly over the city, golden rays spilling into Tasha's apartment. The morning was crisp, quiet, and filled with possibility. After the events of the past week, the storm, the misunderstandings, the moments of vulnerability, Tasha finally allowed herself a sense of calm. She had chosen trust, chosen hope, and she was ready to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. The children played quietly in the living room, their laughter a soft backdrop to the peace that settled over the apartment. Tasha watched them, a gentle smile spreading across her face. Jordan's small hands held a set of building blocks, while Lila hummed a tune, twirling in the sunlight. She thought of the day Ethan had first helped her in the parking lot, soaking wet and frazzled, yet determined to be present. That memory, once bittersweet, now carried a warmth that made her chest ache with gratitude. There was a knock at the door. Tasha's heart skipped, not with fear, but with anticipation. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, rainlight glinting off his shoulders from a passing morning drizzle. He held nothing in his hands, just the quiet strength that had drawn her to him in the first place. "Good morning," he said softly, his eyes locking with hers. There was no pretense, no urgency, just sincerity. "Good morning," she replied, the words feeling lighter than they had in days. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I thought I'd check on you, and the kids," he said, glancing toward the living room where Lila and Jordan continued to play. "And maybe share a coffee?" Tasha's lips curved into a smile. "That sounds perfect." They sat together at the kitchen table, the aroma of brewing coffee filling the space. Silence between them wasn't awkward, it was comfortable, a shared understanding that words weren't always necessary. For the first time, Tasha felt fully seen, fully accepted, and it allowed her walls to remain down without fear. Over the next few hours, the children clung to Ethan's side with ease, trusting him implicitly. Tasha watched the interactions quietly, noticing how naturally he fit into their world, not as an intruder, but as a presence that added warmth and stability. Lila whispered secrets into his ear, while Jordan proudly displayed his latest drawings. Ethan listened attentively, laughing softly, offering encouragement, and occasionally pretending to be amazed at their simple creations. Tasha's heart swelled with an emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel fully in years. Hope. Love had been a distant, almost unattainable dream, yet here it was, messy, imperfect, and beautiful in its authenticity. She looked at Ethan and realized that the moments of tension, fear, and misunderstanding had all been necessary to bring them to this point. "You know," Ethan said quietly, leaning closer, "I never thought a blind date could change my life, but somehow it did." Tasha chuckled softly, a warmth in her eyes. "And I never thought I'd meet someone who just understands. Someone who doesn't run away from the chaos." He smiled, reaching out to gently tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't run," he whispered. "Not from you. Not from us." Later that afternoon, Ethan and Tasha took the children to the park. The autumn air was crisp, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant laughter of other families. Ethan pushed the children on the swings while Tasha watched, hands folded, a soft laugh escaping her lips at their gleeful squeals. "You're good with them," she remarked quietly, echoing a line from their earlier day at the park. Ethan glanced at her, his eyes filled with warmth. "I've always wanted a family," he admitted, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "But I didn't realize what I wanted most was exactly what I found with you." Tasha's heart tightened at the confession. She felt the truth of his words resonate deeply within her. For so long, she had been cautious, protective, hesitant to open herself to love. And yet, here was a man who wanted to step into her life fully, without judgment, without fear. They walked home hand in hand, the children skipping ahead, their laughter filling the space between them. Tasha glanced up at Ethan, a soft smile playing on her lips. "We're really doing this," she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, we are." That evening, the family settled at home. Ethan and Tasha cooked dinner together, the children helping with simple tasks. Lila sprinkled flour on the counter while Jordan offered commentary on their progress, both delighting in the attention and love that surrounded them. Tasha watched Ethan patiently guiding the children, laughing at their antics, and she realized that love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up again and again, even when life was messy. After dinner, the family gathered on the couch. Tasha rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," she murmured. Ethan kissed the top of her head gently. "I know," he said softly. "But here we are. And I'm not going anywhere." Lila yawned, resting her head against her mother's arm, while Jordan's eyelids drooped sleepily. Ethan glanced at Tasha, a quiet question in his gaze. She nodded, and he leaned forward to tuck the children into bed, whispering stories and laughter until their eyes closed. Later, alone on the couch, Tasha and Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them here, the canceled blind date, the storm, the misunderstandings, the fears they had confronted. Each moment, painful or joyful, had led to this, a genuine connection, a bond stronger than either had anticipated. "I guess life has a funny way of bringing people together," Tasha said softly. Ethan nodded, fingers brushing hers. "Yes. Sometimes it takes storms and challenges to see what really matters." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around them like a comforting blanket. The central event, the canceled blind date, was no longer a source of frustration, but a catalyst for unexpected love. And in that love, they found the victory, the joy, and the redemption they had each been searching for. Do you believe that love can be found in the most unexpected ways? Comment below. What unexpected connection changed your life? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.